On Mother's Day, the flower shops are full. The original Mother's Day had white carnations. Children often make cards to go with the flowers that they give to their mother. Molly made a card with a rainbow and unicorn or a dinosaur. I'm not sure which one it is. Let's see what Molly appreciates about her mother. She buys presents. Pierre has drawn a truck or a train or something. Why does he appreciate his mother? She plays with him. Ralph has drawn a superhero Flash. His mom, I guess, is a superhero. Why does he like his mother? She lets him watch Paw Patrol. Here's a young lady who's taken extra care. I love you, Mom. Why? Hugs. Hugs and cuddles and bedtime kisses. Mothers are always really good for that. But I've discovered that it's not always so straightforward. It's quite complicated. Well, these are my triplets, and they're teenagers, and as you can see, they haven't bought their mother any flowers. So I asked them to tell me their reasoning. So here's the first one. Are you ready? No flowers for your mother. She's always nagging me to do things, and she doesn't appreciate anything I do. She's very critical. What about you? What's your reason for not getting your mother anything? Oh, she makes me do all the work around the house, and she makes me go to church. Oh, that sounds like a really bad mother. How about this one? She limits my screen time and criticizes my friends. She never gives me any money, and she treats me like a child. I can understand why your mother isn't getting any flowers this year. She sounds like the mother of a teenager. Our job is really hard. We have to raise our children in the way that they should go, and sometimes that involves discipline. Sometimes it involves redirection. Sometimes it involves making you do things that you don't want to do. Because all of us have the tendency to be a little bit lazy or to enjoy doing one thing and not another.
Okay, kids, your mothers are very precious, and they need to be honored, and they need to be loved. My mother lived in a little town called Menai Bridge, and it's on the Menai Strait. My mother was born in 1915, the second year of World War I. She didn't see her father for 4 years, and obviously he didn't see her either, because he was in Egypt fighting in the war in the Navy. She went to school in her local town, but at 1929, when she was finished in the school, in the elementary school, the Great Depression of 1929 started. That was the year there was a mass unemployment. People didn't have jobs. They didn't have food. The country was in a bad way. So she decided she was going to quit school and get a job. And she did. She worked in a grocery store. She still, after tallying all those grocery bills, could do mental arithmetic well into her 90s. She was very sharp. In 1936, at 21, she got married, and a year later, her first son was born. Unfortunately, 2 years after that, 1939, the Second World War started. That was a very difficult time for families. My parents had a huge garden, and they grew their food all that they could. Mom got chicks so that she could raise hens for eggs and meat. My mother was known for a number of things wherever she was lived. but her love and caring for her family and friends and others in the neighborhood made her a very popular person. I remember as a teenager, she had cards lined up on the mantelpiece from other young women who had worked with her in the office, and they considered her their mother, their most wished for mother. The most important value my mother passed on to me was the value of my family, my friends, and my community. And she used to say, "Don't complain. Laugh and the world laughs with you. Cry and you cry alone." When asked what I would like to be remembered for, it would be to be just half of what my mother was. There isn't a week goes by when my brothers and I share laughter and memories of probably the best mother ever.
The Bible has something for us, Proverbs 31. It talks about the value of a noble character, a wife. And it also relates to what a mother is supposed to be like.
I always told the story. My mom was 16 when she met my father, who was 25, and was, kind of worldly because he was a soldier, right? And had worked in the mines. So and my mother had said, "I'm going to marry your handsome son." My mom was I'm going to call it traditional kind of 1950s mom. When she got married, she stopped doing a career and she took on looking after a family. We very much from an early age were instilled with, we'll call them biblical values, the caring for one another, not bearing false witness. But she lived that, looking after, loving ourselves and our neighbors in a similar way. Many people came for supper, we went for supper, and the size of their group of friends and people that they knew from the place they moved to were always amazing to me. So she concentrated on people one at a time. It wasn't about being a big bang, it was about every day and being there. Mom was not one to want the spotlight. She was not one to try and make the world different. She did make her part of the world different by just being who she was.
It's no wonder that many of us feel as though we can't ever come close. But when you begin to read the list, you start to feel like a huge failure. A wife of noble character who can find she is worth more than rubies. Her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value. She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. And then it has this huge list of things that she does.
I'm not exactly sure when, but it came through my mother to me.
Your grandmother?
My grandmother
Okay.
embroidered it.
Cool. Huh.
This is part of a pillowcase that she embroidered, and the case wore out, but I kept the embroidery. It's Mother's Day, and that's the result of my son bringing those this morning. I was so pleased. So these mean really a lot to me, to get that from my son this morning for Mother's Day, and it just really made me very, very happy. So talking about mothers, I have to say I had a really great one. And some of the needlework that my mother did, she kind of inherited that interest from her mother, and I have inherited that. And it's been a real pleasure to kind of pass on that gift also to my grandchildren. So I'm teaching my grandchildren how to do these needlework things. But that's not the most important thing. And if I can go all the way back to my grandmother and my great-grandmother, she used to keep a room that had a separate staircase upstairs. And anybody who was too drunk or too ill to make it home to their place, they could always go up that special staircase to that little room, and they were welcome there at any time. It was always a clean, fresh bed, and that was her sort of gift to the community. My mother ran Bible studies much in the same way that people in St. Peter's are doing now. Just really took that on as her ministry, and She had a very stable little group that always came, and they just really enjoyed learning about the Lord there. I am most thrilled that all of my children, they all go to church. They all enjoy a relationship with Christ. They all married spouses who are close to God as well. And they are raising their children into the faith. So I am so pleased that I have that legacy of my great-grandmother praying for my grandmother, praying for my mother, praying for me, praying for my children, and now our grandchildren.
I am the oldest of 6 children. My mother gave me music and taught me to be hardworking, to start a job and to finish it, always with excellence. She taught me the importance of faith, the importance of running the race well. Most of all, my mother taught me about grace, about forgiving others and forgiving ourselves. Her experience came out of pain.
I don't think my mother ever had a chance to be herself.
How come?
Well, she went and lived with the Moes when she was 12, and I think they went to BC. And I don't know what went on in her life, but she failed grade 8 twice and quit. And I have no idea what she did all those years. None whatsoever. And then she met Dad, and he's 8 years older, and he was always the dominating figure. So any of her ideas would be squashed. And so it wasn't a happy time, you know. And as kids, we weren't any better. We didn't really respect her the way you should a mother. And so it was this, to say it's a hard thing for me to talk about.
But she gave you some things.
Well, the one thing that she gave me was music. She could play by ear, and she showed me the chords the first time, and then I could play. So that was the one thing that she had. She also was quite creative in writing. She had imagination, which I don't have at all. I don't have one bit of imagination. So there are a few things that if she'd given a chance, you know, to really blossom, she probably would have had many other things that she had. But, you know, she didn't really care to cook, you know, and Dad would go to the store and buy the groceries anyway, and so she didn't have any chance to be creative in that way. And, you know, she just wasn't the ideal mother who did all these things that are happening in the last chapter of Proverbs. Yeah. And I think that one of the things that young mothers should realize, that you cannot be all these things. You cannot be perfect. It's just impossible. And as a young mother, you have so much to learn. And if you are always comparing with other people, mothers that are perfect, and you know you aren't, and you have so many mistakes that you make with your first child. I had never even changed a diaper until you were born. So it was a real learning experience. But here was Grandma that knew everything and that could cook so well, and I didn't really know that much about cooking. I didn't know much about babies. I didn't know any of these things. And so there were so few things that you have as you start out, if your background is such that you've never experienced anything. And so,
That the most important thing that you can do is to be successful as a mom is?
I think to pass on your faith to your children.
Oh, let this grateful heart to me.